There's nothing like the thrill of twisting the throttle and feeling the engine come alive beneath you. For many, motorcycles aren't just machines. They're freedom on two wheels. But not every bike lives up to the dream. Some look great on the showroom floor, yet reveal their flaws on the open road. Others are riddled with reliability issues, awkward handling, or designs that leave riders sore after just a few miles. And then there are the models that are simply overhyped, sold with promises they could never deliver. This countdown explores 15 motorcycles that left owners with one thing in common: regret. These bikes have frustrated riders with breakdowns, poor engineering, and questionable design choices. Whether you're a seasoned rider or just someone who respects good craftsmanship, you'll see why these machines have earned a spot on the list of bikes people wish they never bought. Number 15. Harley-Davidson Street 500. When Harley-Davidson announced the Street 500, it was marketed as the entry point into the Harley family. Affordable, light, and perfect for urban commuting. On paper, it sounded like the answer for riders who wanted Harley style without the bulk or the price tag. Unfortunately, reality didn't match the hype. The first problem? Build quality. Many owners complained that the Street 500 felt cheap compared to Harley's reputation for heavy-duty machines. Plastic components, thin paint, and a generally lightweight feel made it feel more like a budget import than a true Harley. Then came the performance. While the liquid-cooled V-twin engine was a departure from Harley tradition, it left riders underwhelmed. It lacked the torque and rumble that Harley fans expect, making it feel like a motorcycle caught between two worlds, not powerful enough for enthusiasts and not refined enough for new riders. Ergonomics didn't help either. The seating position left taller riders cramped, while the suspension handled potholes and uneven roads poorly. Combine that with a transmission that often felt clunky, and you had a recipe for frustration on both city streets and highways. For many who bought into the dream of owning a Harley, the Street 500 became a harsh reality check. Resale values plummeted, leaving owners not just disappointed, but stuck with a bike few others wanted. What was supposed to be an accessible gateway turned out to be a regretful misstep, both for the company and the riders who brought one home. Number 14. Honda DN01. When Honda unveiled the DN01 in 2008, it was supposed to represent the future of motorcycling. A bold design, automatic transmission, and futuristic styling made it look like something out of a science fiction movie. But what looked revolutionary on paper quickly turned into one of the company's most regretted experiments. The biggest issue was its identity crisis. Honda tried to market the DN01 as a blend of cruiser, sport bike, and scooter. But it didn't excel at any of them. Riders found it too heavy and sluggish to be a true sport machine, too awkward to be a comfortable cruiser, and far too expensive to be compared to a scooter. With its odd angles, oversized fairings, and unconventional proportions, the styling alone was enough to divide opinions. Many riders felt self-conscious just pulling up to a stoplight. Performance wasn't much better. The 680 cubic centimeter V-twin engine was paired with Honda's human-friendly transmission, a continuously variable transmission that removed the need for shifting. While convenient in theory, it left the bike feeling dull and uninspiring. Riders missed the engagement that makes motorcycling fun, and the sluggish acceleration only added to the disappointment. At nearly $15,000 when new, the DN01 was priced like a premium touring machine, but it didn't deliver the comfort or performance expected for that kind of money. Today, the DN01 is remembered as a strange footnote in Honda's history. A bike that tried to be everything but ended up being nothing. Owners who took the plunge often regretted it quickly, especially as resale values plummeted. For many, the DN01 wasn't the futuristic dream Honda promised, but rather an expensive reminder that sometimes innovation misses the mark. Number 13. Yamaha Virago 750. The Yamaha Virago 750 was introduced in the early 1980s as Japan's bold attempt to challenge Harley-Davidson in the cruiser market. At first glance, it had the makings of a winner: a V-twin engine, classic cruiser styling, and Yamaha's reputation for reliability. But what seemed like a promising contender quickly turned into a headache for many owners. The most notorious issue with the Virago 750 was its starter system. Riders nicknamed it the starter grind, a maddening problem where the bike simply refused to fire up consistently. Instead of enjoying long rides, many owners found themselves stranded in parking lots, wrestling with an unreliable ignition that often required costly fixes. Even after multiple revisions, Yamaha never fully solved the issue, leaving a permanent black mark on the Virago's reputation. Then there was the handling. While it looked the part of a cruiser, the bike's geometry felt off. The steering was twitchy at low speeds and unstable at higher ones, making it a machine that didn't inspire confidence on winding roads or highways. Coupled with a stiff suspension that punished riders on anything but smooth pavement, the Virago 750 failed to deliver the comfort many expected from a cruiser. Even the aesthetics were divisive. Some loved its chrome-heavy styling, but others felt it looked like a knockoff Harley without the heritage. And with Harley purists quick to dismiss it, many Virago owners felt they'd bought into a bike that was neither respected nor reliable. While Yamaha has produced some outstanding machines over the years, the Virago 750 remains one of its most regrettable. For riders, the dream of a dependable, affordable cruiser often turned into frustration, leaving the Virago with a legacy of disappointment rather than loyalty. Number 12. Suzuki TL1000S. In the late 1990s, Suzuki launched the TL1000S with the bold promise of delivering a powerful V-twin sport bike that could rival Ducati at a fraction of the cost. On paper, it seemed like a dream. A 996 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin pumping out nearly 125 horsepower, aggressive styling, and a price tag that was far more approachable than the Italian competition. But in practice, the TL1000S quickly became infamous, and not in a good way. The core problem was its handling. Suzuki tried to be innovative with a rotary rear damper instead of a traditional shock, but the result was disastrous. Riders reported unpredictable wobbling, tank slappers, and general instability at speed. So many crashes were linked to the TL1000S that the press nicknamed it the Widowmaker. Suzuki was eventually forced to issue recalls and add steering dampers, but the damage to the bike's reputation was already done. Beyond the handling, comfort was another sore point. The aggressive riding position and stiff suspension made long rides punishing, and vibrations from the big twin left riders fatigued. While the engine itself was strong and had plenty of grunt, It was difficult to enjoy when paired with a chassis that constantly felt like it was trying to buck the rider off. The TL1000S is a textbook example of how a great idea can fall apart in execution. Many owners who bought into the hype of affordable Ducati-like performance found themselves regretting the decision after just a few rides. Resale values dropped, and the bike became more of a cautionary tale than a collector's item. For many riders, the TL1000S was less about chasing thrills and more about surviving them. And that's not exactly the kind of memory you want from your motorcycle. Number 11. Kawasaki Voyager XII. Touring bikes are supposed to be the kings of comfort, built for endless highways and long-distance rides without wearing the rider down. When Kawasaki introduced the Voyager XII in the late 80s, it was aimed squarely at riders who wanted an alternative to the Honda Goldwing. With a big 1,200 cubic centimeters inline four, a full fairing, saddlebags, and plush seating, it looked like a serious contender. But for many owners, it became a lesson in regret. The biggest drawback was reliability over time. While the Voyager XII seemed fine when new, its complex engine and electronics didn't age gracefully. Electrical gremlins, overheating issues, and fuel delivery problems became common complaints as the miles piled on. Unlike the famously bulletproof Goldwing, the Voyager often demanded attention and expensive repairs just to stay on the road. Comfort was another disappointment. On paper, it looked roomy and luxurious, but the seating position cramped taller riders, and the suspension struggled under the bike's heavy weight. Passengers often complained about limited space, making long rides less enjoyable than they should have been. For a machine marketed as a highway cruiser, that was a serious flaw. Then there was the handling. At over 800 pounds fully loaded, the Voyager XII felt like a tank at low speeds. Maneuvering in parking lots or tight turns could be nerve-wracking, and dropping it wasn't uncommon. For riders who wanted confidence and ease, the bike instead became a burden. Ultimately, while some loyalists still swear by it, many riders found themselves wishing they'd chosen the Goldwing instead. The Voyager XII just couldn't match Honda's durability and comfort, leaving buyers with a touring bike that fell short of its promises. Number 10. Buell Blast. The Buell Blast was introduced in 2000 as Harley-Davidson's attempt to attract new riders into the world of motorcycling. Marketed as a beginner-friendly bike with low seat height, manageable power, and easy handling, it was supposed to be the gateway to bigger Harley or Buell models. Instead, it turned into one of the most regretted purchases for countless riders. The first issue was the engine. The Blast used a 492 cubic centimeter single cylinder that was basically half of a Sportster V-twin. On paper, it sounded simple and reliable, but in practice, it was harsh and buzzy. Vibrations were so intense at highway speeds that mirrors blurred, hands went numb, and longer rides became exhausting. Many riders described the bike as feeling cheap and underpowered, especially once they gained a little confidence. Build quality was another sore spot. The Blast came with plastic bodywork that was brittle and prone to cracking. Even minor drops left bikes looking beat up, which is especially discouraging for new riders still learning their skills. Maintenance wasn't particularly friendly either, with quirky design choices that frustrated owners when it came time for repairs. Then there was the resale value. Because the Blast was widely used in Harley's Rider's Edge training courses, the market was flooded with used models. That made it nearly impossible for private owners to get a decent return when they wanted to move on to something bigger. Many riders felt stuck with a bike they had quickly outgrown. The Buell Blast might have seemed like a good idea for first-time buyers, but in reality, it left most people disappointed. Instead of being a memorable first step into motorcycling, it became a bike riders couldn't wait to get rid of. And that's a regret few forget. Number 9. Harley-Davidson V-Rod. When Harley-Davidson unveiled the V-Rod in 2001, it was a radical departure from the brand's traditional formula. With sleek, modern styling and a liquid-cooled Revolution engine co-developed with Porsche, Harley hoped to attract a younger crowd and shake off its old-school-only image. For some, it worked. But for many riders who actually bought one, the V-Rod became a source of regret. The first problem was its identity. The V-Rod didn't feel like a Harley. Sure, it had power. 115 horses from a 1,131 cubic centimeter engine. But it lacked the signature low-end torque and rumble that defined the brand. Longtime Harley fans often dismissed it as an outsider, while younger buyers found it too heavy and expensive compared to sportier alternatives. The bike sat awkwardly between cruiser and sport machine, excelling at neither. Ergonomics also frustrated owners. The stretched-out riding position forced riders to reach forward uncomfortably, especially on longer trips. Combined with a stiff suspension and limited cornering clearance, the V-Rod made for an exhausting ride rather than an enjoyable one. Gas tank placement under the seat added to the awkwardness, with poor fuel range compared to rivals. Then there was the practicality, or lack of it. Luggage options were limited, passenger comfort was minimal, and maintenance costs were higher than average. For a bike meant to break into new markets, it alienated Harley traditionalists while failing to keep newcomers loyal. Though the V-Rod has gained something of a cult following today, especially for its unique design, many riders who owned one back in the day remember it as Harley's oddball experiment. Instead of being a bold new chapter, it became a bike plenty of buyers wished they hadn't rolled off the lot with. Number 8. Triumph Rocket 3. Touring. When Triumph introduced the Rocket 3 in the mid-2000s, it made headlines for one reason: its massive 2,294 cubic centimeter engine, the largest displacement ever put in a production motorcycle at the time. The touring variant promised to combine that jaw-dropping power with long-distance comfort, giving riders a heavyweight cruiser unlike anything else on the market. But while it sounded impressive, many owners quickly learned that bigger doesn't always mean better. The first issue was weight. At nearly 900 pounds fully loaded, the Rocket 3 Touring was a handful to maneuver, especially at low speeds. Parking lots, stop-and-go traffic, or tight corners felt intimidating, even for experienced riders. The bike's bulk often overshadowed its strengths, making every ride feel like wrestling with a beast rather than cruising comfortably. Then there was the engine itself. While it produced an incredible wave of torque, it wasn't always enjoyable. The sheer power felt excessive for everyday riding, and many found the bike hard to control in normal situations. Fuel economy was predictably poor, and with rising gas prices, owners felt the sting of every fill-up. Comfort, surprisingly, was another disappointment. Despite being marketed as a touring bike, the ergonomics weren't ideal for long rides. Heat from the massive engine radiated onto the rider's legs, and the stiff suspension made rough roads a chore. Adding luggage or a passenger only made the handling more unwieldy. Maintenance was no small task either. Specialized parts and labor costs added up quickly, and resale values never matched the original price tag. Many owners realized too late that they had bought more motorcycle than they actually wanted or needed. The Rocket 3 Touring may have been a technical marvel, but for a lot of riders, it was simply too much bike, leaving them with more regret than satisfaction. Number 7. Ducati 999. When Ducati replaced the beloved 916/998 line with the 999 in 2003, expectations were sky high. The 916 had become a design icon, admired for its beauty and performance. The 999, however, quickly turned into one of Ducati's most controversial bikes. And, for many owners, one they wish they'd never bought. The first issue was its looks. Designed by Pierre Terblanche, the 999 abandoned the flowing, sensual lines of its predecessor for a boxier, more angular appearance. Ducati enthusiasts, who loved the Italian flair of the 916 series, were stunned, and not in a good way. Many felt it looked awkward and uninspired, instantly souring the model's reception. But even setting aside the styling, the 999 wasn't without problems. While it offered impressive performance with its Testastretta engine, the bike was notoriously uncomfortable. The aggressive riding position left wrists aching and backs sore, making long rides miserable. Heat management was poor as well, with the bike's underseat exhausts turning city riding into a literal hot seat. Then there were the costs. Like most Ducatis of that era, the 999 demanded frequent and expensive maintenance. Valve adjustments were costly, and parts availability could be inconsistent. Combine that with insurance premiums for a sport bike, and many owners quickly realized they'd bitten off more than they could chew. The 999 has since gained a bit of a cult following among collectors, appreciated for its raw performance and distinct styling. But for the average rider who bought one new, it was a bitter pill. It lacked the timeless charm of its predecessor, required deep pockets to keep running, and delivered comfort levels that bordered on punishment. For many, the Ducati 999 was less of a dream ride and more of a regret they couldn't sell fast enough. Number 6. Moto Guzzi Centauro. In the mid-1990s, Moto Guzzi tried to shake up its image with the Centauro, a muscular, futuristic-looking naked bike powered by the brand's classic longitudinal V-twin. On paper, it was meant to be an Italian alternative to bikes like the Ducati Monster or even certain Japanese standards. But instead of becoming a cult favorite, the Centauro left many owners wondering why they bought one in the first place. The first strike against it was the styling. The Centauro was designed with radical curves, odd angles, and oversized bodywork that split opinions instantly. While some admired its boldness, most riders found it downright unattractive. It never managed to win the kind of universal admiration that Ducati's simpler, cleaner monster design achieved. Performance wasn't much better. The 992 cubic centimeter V-twin engine, while torquey, was plagued by vibration and awkward fueling. Riders often described the power delivery as jerky, especially at low speeds, making urban riding a chore. The weight distribution didn't help either. The Centauro was heavy and cumbersome in corners, offering little of the agility you'd expect from a naked bike. Then there was reliability. Moto Guzzi's reputation for quirky electrics and finicky maintenance carried over here. Owners frequently complained of electrical gremlins, oil leaks, and a general lack of refinement compared to Japanese competitors of the same era. Parts availability outside of Europe was another headache, leaving American riders especially frustrated when something went wrong. At a time when buyers were spoiled with reliable, stylish, and affordable bikes, the Centauro felt like an overpriced oddity. Its resale values plummeted, and many ended up sitting in garages collecting dust rather than racking up miles. For riders who took a chance on Moto Guzzi's muscle bike, the Centauro became more of a conversation piece than a beloved ride. And not in a good way. Number 5. Honda Rune. The Honda Rune, introduced in 2004, was one of the most ambitious motorcycles Honda ever built, and one of its most regretted by buyers. Born from a concept bike that wowed crowds at shows, the Rune was meant to be a rolling piece of art, blending futuristic design with Honda's engineering might. And while it certainly turned heads, it left many owners wishing they had spent their money elsewhere. The first issue was the price. At nearly $27,000 when new, the Rune cost as much as a fully loaded touring bike, yet it wasn't practical for touring, commuting, or much else beyond showing off. It was heavy, at almost 900 pounds, and the radical styling, with its huge front fork, stretched proportions, and massive fenders, made it a bike that was more sculpture than ride. Performance-wise, it carried the Goldwing's Flat 6 engine, which was smooth and powerful. But the Rune's bulk and odd ergonomics meant it wasn't comfortable for long rides. The stretched-out position wore riders down, and handling in tight spaces was nerve-wracking. It didn't corner gracefully, and parking lot maneuvers could feel like moving a small car. Then there was the problem of purpose. The Rune didn't really fit into any category. It wasn't a cruiser in the traditional sense, it wasn't a touring bike, and it definitely wasn't a sport machine. It was a showpiece. Impressive to look at, but difficult to live with. Owners who expected it to be a practical daily rider often found themselves frustrated. To this day, the Rune remains one of the boldest production bikes Honda ever made, but also one of the most misunderstood. Many who bought one ended up with an expensive garage ornament instead of a motorcycle they truly loved to ride. Number 4. Kawasaki Eliminator 125. When Kawasaki released the Eliminator 125, the idea was simple. Create an entry-level cruiser for new riders who wanted the look of a bigger bike without the intimidation factor. Unfortunately, what sounded practical on paper became a letdown in reality, leaving many owners feeling they'd wasted their money. The first problem was the engine. The 125 cubic centimeter single-cylinder barely produced enough power to get the bike moving with confidence. On city streets, it felt sluggish, and on highways, it was downright unsafe. Struggling to keep up with traffic at 55 to 60 miles per hour made the Eliminator 125 a source of constant frustration. For anyone expecting even a modest cruiser experience, the lack of power was a deal-breaker. Build quality didn't help its case. While not terrible, the bike felt cheap compared to Kawasaki's larger cruisers. Thin materials, basic suspension, and minimal features made it clear that this was a cost-cutting exercise. Riders who bought into the styling soon realized it was all show and no substance. Then there was the problem of growth. Most riders outgrow a 125 cubic centimeter motorcycle in a matter of months. The Eliminator wasn't a bike you could hold on to for years. It was one you'd quickly regret buying once you gained even a little experience. And unlike other beginner bikes, its resale value was poor. Few riders wanted to buy a used Eliminator when better small displacement bikes were available from Honda or Yamaha. For many, the Eliminator 125 became the motorcycle equivalent of buyer's remorse. It promised the cruiser lifestyle, but delivered a machine that was underpowered, uninspiring, and ultimately forgettable. Instead of being a proud first step into motorcycling, it left riders eager to trade up as fast as possible. Number 3. Harley-Davidson Sportster 883, Iron and Standard variants. Few bikes in Harley's lineup are as well known as the Sportster 883. For decades, it's been pitched as the affordable entry into the Harley lifestyle. Small, approachable, and relatively inexpensive. But while the Sportster 883 has plenty of fans, it's also one of the most regretted purchases for many riders. The first issue is performance. With just 883 cubic centimeters and modest horsepower, the bike feels underwhelming, especially for anyone who spends time on highways. It lacks the passing power and torque of Harley's bigger bikes, leaving riders frustrated when trying to keep up with traffic on longer trips. Many owners describe it as too much bike for a beginner, not enough for an experienced rider, meaning it ends up in an awkward middle ground. Then there's comfort. The Sportster 883 has a cramped riding position and a notoriously harsh suspension. Even short rides can leave riders sore, especially on rough pavement. Combine that with a small gas tank that requires frequent fill-ups, and the 883 quickly shows its limitations as a daily or touring bike. Maintenance and vibration add to the list of regrets. The air-cooled Evolution engine has a classic feel, but the vibration through the handlebars and seat is relentless. Riders often joked that you needed to check your mirrors after every ride because they'd be rattled loose. And while reliability isn't awful, it doesn't match the dependability of Japanese competitors. Finally, resale value isn't as strong as buyers expect. With so many used Sportsters flooding the market, owners often struggle to get a fair price when they decide to move on to a larger Harley. For many, the 883 is the bike they outgrow too quickly, leaving them with sore backs, empty gas tanks, and the feeling that they should have saved up for something better in the first place. Number 2. Royal Enfield Bullet 500. The Royal Enfield Bullet 500 carried an old-world charm that drew in riders looking for a classic motorcycle experience. With its vintage styling, thumping single-cylinder engine, and heritage stretching back decades, it promised nostalgia on two wheels. Unfortunately, for many owners, that charm wore off quickly, leaving them with a machine that felt more like a burden than a joy. The first issue was reliability. The Bullet 500 was notorious for oil leaks, electrical gremlins, and frequent mechanical hiccups. While some riders embraced the quirks as part of its character, others grew tired of constantly tinkering just to keep the bike running. Long-distance reliability was especially questionable, making it a risky choice for anyone hoping to rack up serious miles. Then there was the performance. With only around 27 horsepower, the 500 struggled to keep pace on highways. Riders often described it as sluggish, with vibrations that turned even short rides into tiring experiences. At higher speeds, mirrors blurred, hands tingled, and the bike felt strained. hardly confidence-inspiring on modern American roads. Comfort wasn't much better. The suspension was basic, the brakes felt outdated, and the overall ride quality reminded many owners why motorcycles had evolved in the first place. While the styling suggested a retro cruiser, the experience often felt more like riding a machine stuck decades in the past. Finally, parts availability and service outside of India could be a challenge. U.S. owners sometimes found themselves waiting weeks for spares or paying more than the bike was worth to keep it on the road. The Bullet 500 may have been dripping with nostalgia, but for riders expecting dependability and practicality, it often turned into a lesson in regret. Instead of timeless charm, many found themselves with a temperamental machine better admired from afar than ridden daily. Number 1. Suzuki Hayabusa. First-generation missteps. Few bikes are as legendary as the Suzuki Hayabusa. Launched in 1999, it shattered records as the fastest production motorcycle in the world, capable of hitting close to 190 miles per hour right off the showroom floor. For adrenaline junkies, it was the ultimate bragging right. But for many everyday riders who actually bought one, the Hayabusa turned out to be less of a dream machine and more of a regretful reality. The first issue was practicality, or the lack of it. The Hayabusa was a missile built for speed, not comfort. Its aggressive riding position left wrists aching and backs sore after even moderate rides. Combine that with poor fuel economy and a tiny range compared to touring or cruiser bikes, and many riders quickly realized it wasn't made for everyday use. Then came the power itself. With nearly 175 horsepower on tap, the Hayabusa demanded respect. New or overconfident riders who underestimated it often found themselves in dangerous situations. Insurance companies took notice too, slapping the bike with sky-high premiums. What seemed like a thrill quickly became an expensive, high-risk ownership experience. Maintenance costs added to the regret. Tires wore out fast, chains stretched under the brutal torque, and keeping the bike in top shape wasn't cheap. And while Suzuki's engineering was solid, the sheer stress the bike put on components meant more frequent upkeep compared to milder machines. Finally, there was the image problem. The Hayabusa's reputation as a speed demon attracted attention from law enforcement and carried a stigma in some circles. Many owners discovered that outside of straight-line speed runs, the bike wasn't nearly as versatile as they'd hoped. The Hayabusa remains iconic, no doubt. But for countless riders who bought one expecting the ultimate motorcycle, it became the definition of overkill. A bike that was simply too much, too impractical, and ultimately too regretful to hold on to. Every rider dreams of the perfect bike, but as this list shows, not every motorcycle lives up to the promise. From design flaws to impractical performance, these machines left more disappointment than joy. At the end of the day, the best ride is the one you never regret owning.